Let's continue with the labor mobility. And basically, I should also mention that labor mobility is not only a case for the national, international level, but also at national level. It has many, let's say, it has dimensions. So for each nation, also the mobility tends to increase, and that might be also one. Well, for example, in case of United States, the identity of to certain region is actually, especially for the people living in cities, is to some extent declining, and that might be, and when that identity to certain regions of a country declines, actually that might be also in future help the mobility at international level also. For a job that suits you better, but also for a place that suits you better, both cases. One interesting aspect actually of the labor mobility is in, especially, I mean, that's the extreme case, but the similarities exist in other countries, in international level also. The dormitory system, where actually the workers that are coming from a place in China leave their families there and come to the dormitories of the factories and live together in the dormitories. That actually increases the contact of the workers much more. Workers are not anymore just working with each other, but also outside of the working hours, they live together, and pretty much their living conditions are also set by the factory owners in this case. In other places, the dormitory system, dormitory system exists in some cases in the construction companies. And I don't know, at least whether it exists also in the industry. Maybe it exists also in some industrial cases. In agriculture, I know cases where, I mean, in the United States, for example, the agricultural workers coming from Mexico were staying in the dormitories. But still, even without the dormitory system, a significant portion of the international mobile workers come to a country and stay in the immigrant neighborhoods without their family, leaving their family in their country. Because, I mean, in their country they might be at least have some safety net for their family, and raising their children especially might be easier in their country, while in the foreign country they work, raising their children might be more costly and more difficult, more work intensive, because they might not have the safety net, at least the safety net. In some cases also some social protection provided by their country themselves, even for some developing countries. For example, well, in even two countries that are as close as TRNC and Turkey, as far as I know, if I had a child in this country, TRNC, I'm originally from Turkey, I need to pay for the education costs even if I send my child to a public school, while in Turkey education is free. Of course, I mean, I might still give my child in Turkey or here to a private school also, but at least as an unskilled worker, I might have the consideration. Maybe I might rather give my child to the free, at least the option of giving my child to, letting my child to go to a free school is there. Here, that option is not there if I don't have the money. And these are some examples. I mean, certain rights that exist in your country, provided by your country, even as a developing country, might not exist in the country where you are working. Even when two countries are as close as Turkey and TRC, basically, I mean, in terms of the governments of the countries and the cultures of the countries are close. So that might basically make people to left their families in their home countries, and basically that increase interaction of the workers in this case, because when you spend less time with your family, you might spend more time with them workers, your co-workers, basically. And this might actually bring the wage differentials of the different countries and closer to each other. There might be still differences between the workers, both in terms of their skills, culture, which might also feed back into productivity, maybe, and the working conditions. But those differences might increasingly exist everywhere globally. So there might be different groups of workers, different segments of workers exist everywhere, and basically the differences that are depending on the regions might decrease, maybe not completely disappear, but it might decrease as a result of labor mobility. So I have different videos on labor mobility. Basically, you might watch them if you would like them. And now, briefly, I won't go to data on inequality. You have already seen data on inequality in the previous part. I won't go into much detail on it, but basically note that if you want to basically cover inequality and look to different dimensions of inequality, actually the data you might look are wealth inequality, which is actually which might be the primary inequality, actually, because the wealth stock you have defines your options, your options, basically. The income you have is actually a stream of wealth that is actually initially it might help you to survive even if you don't have wealth accumulation, but in the end it also makes you to accumulate some wealth, which might give you some protection. Without that protection, for example, even when you are not working for a month, you might, for example, be evacuated from your house, which might be by itself something which makes the life of a person much more difficult, especially if that person doesn't have a safety net. So wealth inequality and income inequality are the two types of inequalities that are actually most used to measure the inequality. And we might look at an index that is measuring the total inequality, the total differences, which total spread of the wealth differences and income differences. Alternatively, actually, you might also look to the top and bottom groups in the basically within the labor force and global population in general. You might also look to the wage differences. That's another case, actually, the high wage earners and low wage earners, and how also the capital and the as Piketty does, capital and the labor income differs from each other, and whether to what extent the capital labor income differences are actually feeding back to the inequality. And also note that, I mean, when your wealth is sufficiently large, you might use your wealth as a source of income, and in that case, you don't necessarily initially become capitalist, because in order to be capitalist, basically, you should also be able to control the production process using your wealth. That will own a means of production and operate it, basically, own a company and operate it. However, basically, still still, as you have higher and higher and higher level of wealth, that might increasingly encourage people to use that wealth as a source of income, and at some point actually own your own company and basically use it in that way. So in that sense, I mean, to what extent, the people who already have wealth, how much more they can earn how much higher is their income compared with the people who don't have wealth is an important question, because I mean whether it is possible for the people who don't own wealth to go to accumulate wealth and become company owners is another question basically. Of course, financial system is an important system which might provide a source of capital for the people who don't have. But of course, if you don't have kind of wealth accumulation yourself, access to the finance might not be that easy, basically. So this is inequality and how you can look to the different dimensions of inequality when you look to data. Of course, you might also look directly to the poverty and people below the poverty, because that's a special type of group which don't earn sufficient amount of income to live a healthy life. There is extreme poverty when actually even the basic needs are not met by the people, by your income. What are the factors that are creating this inequality? One question is informal work. I mean, a certain segment of the population might be pushed to a certain group of jobs which are not legally existing. As a result, the working conditions can be modified by them. As long as, I mean, there can be maybe some informal works where the worker has some kind of a power, for example, tutoring. But in other cases, the conditions might be set by the employer more easily, especially when there's a power dimension. So the role of this informal work is a basic question, and how, in that sense, informal job markets are one of the interesting, important, one of the dimensions of the labor markets that people, this economists interested in global inequality also are interested in. And role of other factors, which might be, for example, I mean, the capital mobility, especially, which might lead to, as we have told before, the race to the bottom, as well as the inability of the workers to organize, which might partially caused by the globalization as national level of organizations become relatively less relevant, as also the national protections become relatively weaker. So those factors are also some factors that might actually be related to the global inequality and causing and affecting global inequality. While mobility of the labor force and globalization to some extent might also maybe empowering, I mean, bringing the wage rates to closer range, and to some extent they might also have a power to decrease the global inequality. But which side is right? I mean, whether it race to the bottom, so that, I mean, in each country the top becomes richer and bottom becomes poorer, or whether it is rather balancing the global inequality and makes all workers and all population of the world relatively bring them to the same level. That's one of the biggest, again, one of the questions related to the globalization process. So as a last thing, this is provided by ILO, the labor report, International Labor Organization, and I want to look to some data, but I will go over whole book just in case you might have something. There might be something interesting for you in the book. But some graph, I will just pass certain graphs, and I will look to other graphs in more detail. So let's go down. So this is the first graph, which is unemployment, global unemployment rate up to the 2018. And as you see, it is approximately around 6%. Of course, this doesn't, we just look at the unemployment. We are not looking to the labor force participation, which is completely another thing. So unemployment rate you can see in different countries. More or less, you can see, interestingly, the unemployment rate is the same everywhere. And that's an important and interesting data. Let me stop here and let me continue in the next part.